Yes, so in this session, we'll discuss about the concept of Sling models. Okay, so what does it mean by the Sling models and what is the use of Sling models? Okay, so as a part, we also discussed HDL in the previous sessions. So in order to render the dynamic content into the components. So when we are going for this HDL, so with the help of the HDL, we can only render the dynamic content. Okay, but if you want to write any custom business logic, so then with the help of the HTL, we can't do that. Okay. So in this case, with the help of the HTL, we can just read the content from the content node. Okay. But to display the but to perform any business logics in the component environment, so it is not possible to do the business logic. So if you want to perform the business logic inside a component, so then with the help of the Sling models, we can do that. Okay. So to perform any custom business logic to the components with the help of the Sling models, we'll be performing that custom business logic. So what does this mean by the Sling model? Okay, so Sling model is just a POJO class, so plain old Java object. So in this plain old Java classes, we can't write anything. Okay, so we can just create a variable and then we can create the getter and the setter method. So as a part of the POJO classes, we can only perform these two actions. Okay, so we can generate the getters and the setter methods. Okay, so apart from that, so POJO classes will not accept any type of method. So Sling models are nothing but POJO classes which automatically maps your Sling model with the JCR properties. Okay, so these Sling models are entirely annotation driven. So wherever I want to get anything or we want to perform any action, so there is no need to write any custom or bigger length of code. So we can just simply use the predefined annotations. Adobe has introduced a lot of annotations. So with the help of those annotations, we can easily perform those business logic. So it is entirely annotation driven. Okay. So if you want to also, if you, it also supports to the out of the box as well. Okay, so if you want to use if you want to read the properties from the CRXT, right? So in order to read the properties from the CRXT and to perform some business logic as well, so we have the annotations. So we can directly inject the data and then we can perform the actions whatever we have needed. Okay, so it supports for the both classes and interfaces. So if I want to create a class, we can create a Sling model with a class. We can also create the Sling model with an interface. So they support both. Okay, so these are the advantages. So there is no need to there is no need to write length of code in order to map your resource to the object. So resource is nothing but and node in the CRX, you have property in the CRX, you call it as a resource. Okay, so object is nothing but the variables which we create in Java. So in order to map your resource with the object as well, so there are predefined annotations. With the help of those predefined annotations, we can easily get that. Okay, so we'll see an example. So how to create the Sling model and how to map the objects from the CRXT to the backend of Java classes and perform some custom business logic in that. Okay, so in order to write for a Sling model, so for which thing we'll be writing the Sling models for the component. Okay, so just log in with your credentials. Okay, so we are working on the Marvel components, right? So here we have one component called Marvel details is one component we are having. So in order to perform the business logic to these components, we have to create a Sling model, and for the Sling model, we can perform the business logic. So for what we will be performing the business logic for the data only, right? So where the data is storing, the data is storing in the content node. So from this content node, we need to retrieve the data and then we need to perform that business logic on the data which is available here. Okay, so from the content node, you have to read the data. Okay, so in order to read the data inside your backend Java classes, so whatever we are having, so whenever we are working on the backend, so all the backend modules is being applied in the core only. Okay, so only the core is one backend module we are having. So whatever the backend classes we want to write, so all the backend classes you will be writing inside the code module. Okay, so go inside code and then source and then main. So every time when you are writing, so you have to write in the source main. Okay, so whenever we are creating the Java test cases, so at that time we have to write inside the test class. Okay, so target is nothing but the generated sources when we compile. So Maven creates some generated sources when we compile. So you should not create inside the target class. Okay, so every time when you are working on, we have to create in the source main. And then we have a lot of packages here. Okay, so in order to manage your Sling models, a package is already available, which is the models package. So inside this models package, you can create your Sling models. So okay, go inside the Sling models and then right click on it, create a new Java class. You can name it as anything. So I'll just name it as Marvel Details. Okay. So okay, so Marvel demo model dot Java is one class I have created. Okay, so this is one normal Java class I have created, which we have named as public class Marvel demo model. Okay, so now in order to write your backend Java classes, we have to create a Sling model. Okay, so we have to create a Sling model for that in order to read the data. So now this is our normal Java class. So how we can convert this normal Java class into a Sling model? So here Adobe has provided one annotation which is nothing but at the rate model is one annotation we are having. So at the rate model is one annotation and then always the import should be org Apache Sling models annotation should be the import. Okay, so here you can see the import. So every time when you are, so if with the help of this model annotation, so what we are doing is we are converting our normal Java class into an Sling model. So if you want to convert your normal Java class into a Sling model, so then with the help of this model annotation, we can do that. And then here it accepts one mandatory attribute, which is nothing but adaptables. Okay, so adaptables is one mandatory attribute our Sling model accepts. So what does it mean by the adaptables? Okay, so AEM has defined two types of adaptables. One is resource.class and second one is Sling HTTP servlet request.class. So you can adapt your Sling model for either both. Okay, so first one is nothing but a resource.class. So import should be org Apache Sling API dot resource should be the import. So resource dot class. So one is the resource dot class we are having. So what does it mean by the resource dot class? Okay. So simply if you want to read the properties, okay. So if you want to read the JCR node properties, so at that time we have to adapt your Sling model as a resource dot class to read the node properties from the CRXT. Suppose if I want to read a lot of data, okay, so we have something called as an request attributes, okay, so or if I want to read a request data, so something if I open a page, okay, so this is a page, so with the help of the request, so this is a request data, I'm setting a request to the server, okay, so if I want to read the request type of objects, so at that time here I can adapt my Sling model as Sling HTTP servlet request dot class. Sling HTTP servlet request dot class. So when we go for the Sling HTTP servlet request, so if you want to get the request level data, like if you want to use the uh, global objects, so at that time with the help of Sling HTTP servlet request dot class, we can adapt our Sling model. So if I want to just only read the JCR node properties, okay, so just I want to perform only the reading of JCR node properties. So at that case, you can adapt your Sling model as resource.class. So these are the two types of adaptables that Adobe has provided. One is resource.class and Sling HTTP servlet request.class. Suppose if you want your Sling model adaptable by both. Okay, so in some cases, I want to read the JCR node properties as well as I want to perform the operations on global objects. Okay, like at the rate request attribute, at the rate script variable, or some annotations are available. So if I want to use those annotations, so at that time we have to adapt your Sling model as Sling HTTP servlet request dot class. So if you want to perform on both, So at that time, we can also pass as an array. So this adaptables parameter will accept the value as an array as well. So we can also adapt to both at the same time. So we can adapt to resource.class as well as Sling HTTP servlet request.class at the same time. Okay, so we can go for the both of the annotations. And then now what I want to do here is, so first I want to perform some business logic. So whatever the custom requirement I'm having, so I want to perform the business logic inside this component. So in order to perform the business logic for this component, so what we need to have the data, right? Okay. So now my primary goal is to read the data from the component dialog. So whatever the data that is entered by the content author inside this component dialog, so I want to read the data. Okay. So where the data is storing, so the data is storing in the form of notes, and notes is storing the data in the form of properties, right? So us en, and then somewhere the component would be available if you add on the page. So otherwise, whatever the data that notes are storing or the properties are storing, so based on the name property they will be storing the data, right? So if I go for text, so dot slash title is the property which holds the value. So in order to read the data from this dialog, so simply we can call this variable. Okay, so we are just importing our, so we have created one normal Java class, and then we have converted that into Sling model. Okay, and then we have adapted to read the data from the AEM. Okay, so with the help of resource.class or Sling HTTP servlet request.class, we are adapting to read the data. Okay, so in order to map the value between CRXT to your backend Java class, how we can do that? Okay, so there is no need to go for the bigger things. So here we are having one annotation that is @inject. Okay. So @inject is one annotation which is used to map your resource to the object. So resource is nothing but a property in the CRFT. Okay. Object is nothing but a variable in the Java class. Okay. So @inject, and I want to store the data. So how we can store the data in a Java class? So if you want to store the data, we have to create an
Create one
variable.
variable.
So private, and then what is the return type here? So string is the return type. So private, and then variable should be string, and then you have to specify the name. So here, every time remember, so whenever you are mapping your objects from your front end to from your resource to an object, so every time the name variable must be same. Okay. Suppose if I'm specifying here title one, and I'm trying to inject title, it will not inject the data. Okay. So always here the name with name, and then here the variable should be same. Okay. So always it should be the same. So just try to copy paste the values instead of writing this one. So by using @inject annotation, we can inject the data from the CRXT no, to your Java variable. So this is one annotation that is available. And here also we are having one more annotation that is @value map value. So with the help of this value map value annotation as well, so we can inject the data from the CRXT to the backend or Java class. So then what is the difference? So we'll try to inject the description with this one. Okay. So by using @value map value annotation, I'm injecting the description, and by using @inject, I am injecting the title. So the major difference between @inject and @value map value is the scope. Okay. So how we are getting the data. So whenever you are using this @value map value annotation, so this @value map is a predefined class. Okay. So at the time of HCL, we have discussed right? Value map is one class. Okay. So if you want to read only the properties, okay. So here we have one injection strategy. So how the inject will go. Okay. So whenever I'm using this @value map value annotation, so it will directly go there, and then it will directly fetch the value from this value class. Okay. So that means it will directly fetch the value from the properties. Now this is the description. So when I'm specifying here @value map value, and I specify here description, so it will only search for the properties. Okay. So if you are using this @inject annotation, so it will follow some process. So first it will check for the script bindings. Okay. So if it is not available in the script binding, so then it will go for the value map value. And then after that, if it is not available here, so it will go for the resource path. If it is not available, then it will go for the child resource. After that, it will go for the request attribute. Okay. So we can't specify. So when you are going, if you want to inject the global data, So then we have to go for at the rate inject annotation. Okay. So but when you are going for the value map value, so at the rate value map value will directly refer to this value map class, and then it will directly fetch the data from this properties. So it will not first check the nodes. After checking the nodes, it will not go inside the properties. So if you are going for at the rate inject, that is the way. So first it will check for the nodes, and after that it will go inside the properties. But when you are using at the rate value map value annotation, it will directly check the properties, and then it will inject the data from the properties. Okay, so that is the main difference between at the rate inject and at the rate value map value. So both are used to inject the data from the CRXT only. Okay, so same like we can also inject the other data as well. So at the rate value map value, and then create a variable. So private string, and then we are having an image. So hero image is the way the data stores. You can just copy paste them. Okay, so avoid typing them. So there might be an typo error. So at that time it will raise an issue in the Sling model. Okay, so always try to copy paste the values. And after that, we are having a drop down, and then the data is storing inside this value. So at the rate value map value, private string, and then continue. So if you are not using this at the rate value map value annotation, and if you create a variable, it will not inject the data. Okay. So whenever we are using the annotation, so then only it will inject the data. So if you are not specifying at the rate value map value or at the rate inject, so it will just become a normal Java variable. So it will not map your Sling object with your resource in the CRXT. Okay. So at the rate value map value, and then create a variable private, and then date picker we are having. Okay. So for the dates, you have to go with the date data type which is available in Java. So it should be the input should be java.util.date should be the input. So private date, and you will specify the date picker is the value. Okay. So now this is the data that we have inside the parent node. Okay. So this is the parent node. That means we are having inside the one tab. Suppose if I'm having any direct data inside another tab as well, I can inject in the same way. So, but when it comes to here, so here we are having the data in a multi-field. Okay. So the second tab data we are having inside the multi-field. Okay. So every time when you are having a multi-field, so you should not create that. So you should not inject the values directly here. Okay, because when you see the structure of a multi-field, multi-field stores the data in the form of chain nodes. Okay, suppose if I'm having a component, so in that component, if it is having a multi-field, so multi-field how it will store the data? So it will store the data in the form of chain nodes. If I go for this Marvel details, in the form of chain node, it is storing the data. And then if I go inside this chain node, I have multiple items. Okay, so we have multiple items. So whenever you want to read the data from this multi-field nodes, if you want to read the data, so you have to create the child Sling models for it. You can't directly write the Sling model inside the parent class. Okay, so create one more child class here, and then inside the child class, we'll iterate the multi-field data because these are the child nodes, and these child nodes can contain more than one item. So whenever I'm trying to inject here, so we can only inject single property data. Suppose if I go here inside this, so what is mean by single property data? So now I'm having text here. Okay. So if I go for the dialog, and if I try to use this text, so where it will store? It will store in the parent node. Okay. Suppose if I try to enter again text, so if the content author tries to enter the same text again or a different text again, so it will alter this variable only. So it will alter the title variable only. It will not create a new variable, and it will not store the data. But when it comes to multi-field, so multi-fields can have a lot of chain nodes. Okay. So a lot of chain nodes can multi-field have, and then each item will store multiple properties. Okay. So in order to iterate through multiple chain nodes, and in order to fetch the data, so we have to create the Sling model as an chain model. Okay, so you can just create one more Sling model the same way we are having. So create one class, and then Marvel demo chain, Okay, so now this is one normal Java class. What we need to do? So we have to convert this normal Java class into a Sling model. So how we can convert? At the rate model is the annotation. So at the rate model, and then here we have to pass adaptables. And then we have to adapt your Sling model, either resource.class or Sling HTTP servlet request.class in order to read the data from the AEM. Okay. So I will adapt as both. So resource, if you want to adapt as both, you have to mention as an array. Okay. So resource dot class and then Sling HTTP servlet request dot class. So always the input should be org Apache Sling API, Sling HTTP servlet request, org Apache Sling API, resource dot. Okay, so resource should be the input. So now you'll follow the same way. So at the rate value map value and then create a variable private string. How it is storing the data? You can just come here and then we are having two fields, right? One is text, another one is an image. So go inside text and then multi-title is the variable that is storing the multi-field data. So multi-title and then at the rate value by value. We are having an image here. Okay. So multi-dot image is the image we are having. So now whatever the data we are having here, so these are a private variables. Okay. So if you want to access the data of a private variables outside the class, how we can do that? So this is a Java class. Okay. And then I have declared the variables as a private. So when I'm specifying this as a private means they are only available in this class, right? So outside the class they are unknown. So if I want to access these data, whatever the data that is there inside these variables, if I want to access this data outside the class, how we can access it?
Getters and setters.
Getter. Yes. The concept of encapsulation. So we have to create the getter methods for it in order to just view the data. So I don't want to alter the data. So I just want to view the data. So at that time we have to go for the getter methods. So you can just generate them, source action, and then click on generate getters. So I want to generate for these two variables. You can just click on generate. Okay. So every time after injecting the values only, these getter methods will be available. So first thing is to inject the data and after that it will use this getter and the setter methods. Okay. So now whatever the child we are having, so we have to call this child inside this Marvel demo. Okay. So we have to call because we will be not calling this object directly. Okay. So we'll be calling this Marvel demo model because this is the main model. Okay, so every time when we are calling the model, we will be calling the main model only. So if you want to call this child model inside this Marvel demo model, so how we can do that? Okay, so what is this one? This is a class. Okay, so for the class, we'll be having the object. Okay, so if I want to read this class, how can I read this data? So we have to go for at the rate child resource is one annotation. So at the rate child resource annotation, and then I have to create a variable and then store the whatever the data that class contains. I have to store the data inside this variable. Okay, so that's fine. I can create a variable. But which type of variable you will be creating? Okay, so what type of variable you will be creating? Okay, so here if I go inside this class, I don't know how many nodes it will create. So this is a child resource and it is a multi-field data. So this multi-field data, we don't know how many nodes it will be having. So every time if you are inserting one more multi-field, so at that time it will create item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. Okay. So it is having multiple nodes. Okay. So when it is a multiple nodes, how we can create an object? Okay. So how we can store the object data inside Java? So at that time we have to go for the collection. Okay, so we have list, right? So just create a list here. So java.inbuild.list and then whatever the data I'm having, so that data should be the type of this Marvel memo chain. Okay, so just copy this value here and then specify this one. So list, and then here you have to specify the child class name and where the data is storing here. So if you observe here, if you observe this multi-field structure clearly, so the data is storing inside this child node, right? So inside the composite multi, the data is storing. So here we are having the data. This data is above. This data is under composite multi-field node. Okay, so that means whatever the items we are having, so all the items will be storing inside this composite multi value. So we have to call this multi value here. Okay, so where we have defined this one, so when a multi-field data we are having, so inside the field we are creating a name variable, right? So inside the field we have the name variable. So that field we have to call. Okay, so now it is done. So we have injected the data and then we have injected the shell resource as well. So here as well, we'll try to create the getter methods, source action, and then generate getters because these are also private variables. Okay, now we have generated the getter methods here. So now what we are doing is we are just reading the data. So we are just syncing the data from your front end to back end, but we are not performing any business logic. So if you want to perform any business logic inside the Sling model, so if I want to perform any functions, any functionality if I want to create, so how can I create the functionality inside the methods, right? So whenever I want to have a functionality, suppose if I want to add two numbers, so then I'll go to public int type is one method I'm creating. But if I go for this one, so our Sling model are POJO classes. Okay, so POJO class means plain old Java objects where apart from the getter and the setter methods, we cannot create any methods. Okay, so if you want to write any custom business logic inside these POJO classes, so here we are having one more thing. So in order to create any custom methods, okay, inside your POJO classes, so how we can create? So here we are having one annotation that is at the rate post construct is one annotation we are having. So with the help of this at the rate post construct annotation, so if you want to specifically create any methods to perform your business logic, so at that case with the help of at the rate post construct annotation, we can do that. Okay, so I'll create a method here. So public void init is one method I am creating. Okay, so this post construct method will execute after injecting all the data. So first it will inject all the data because if we are executing this at that post construct method, it will throw a null point issue. Why? Because so we are performing the business logic inside this data. So without injecting the data, so how we can perform the logic? So this at the rate post construct method will execute at the last. Okay, so after injecting all the data, it will execute the post construct method at the last. So public void init is the method, and then I'll write some small logic here. If if condition, if title, if title is not equals to null, and title, if title is not equals to null, so at that case, what I'll do is I'll convert the text into the uppercase. So whatever the data that is there here inside this string, so I'll convert that text data title into the uppercase. Okay, so how we can convert the title into the uppercase? We have some standard methods inside string, right?
to
Title dot
to
to
uppercase.
uppercase is the method which will convert the string into the uppercase. But if you closely observe here, so whenever you are trying to alter a string, string is immutable in nature, right? String is immutable in nature. When you try to alter a value of a string, so what it will do? It will create a new data, right? So it will create a new entire data. But when I'm trying to do here, title is equals to dot to uppercase, so it will not alter this variable, right? So whatever the core data that is having, so that data will be assigned to that variable only. But when I'm trying to alter, it will create a newer data. Okay, so it will create a new variable, and inside that new variable, it will store the data. So in order to apply the changes, reassign the value to it only. So title is equals to title dot to uppercase. I'm reassigning the value so that will solve your issue. So now this is how we can create an Sling model. So for the Sling model, we can also add some custom properties as well. Okay. So every time, as this is a Pojo class, so this plain Java classes, what it will do is it will not accept null pointer. Okay. So what does it mean by the null values? Okay. So what happens here is, so if you are going for the dialog, okay, so if I open any dialog inside any component, okay, so this is not a mandatory field. Suppose if I'm having here, so it is not a required field. And if I go for text as well, it is not a required field. Suppose content authors does not require anything. So here we are having pre-title. Pre-title is one field inside the dialog. So this is not an required field. This pre-title is not a required field. So that means if the content author is not authoring this field, okay, if the content author, when he does not author this no, unrequired fields, but still when you are coming from the back, when you are coming for the Sling models, so Sling models by defaultly by defaultly wants every value as an required. Okay, so every property we are having inside the Sling model is an required field. But when it comes to the dialog, so they might not be an required fields. Okay, so the content author will not enter the data inside those fields. So without entering the data, content author submits the dialog. So when it submits the dialog, so then it will throw an exception called as a null pointer exception. So who will throw the null pointer exception? Whatever the custom Sling model we have created, that custom Sling model will throw the null pointer exception. So in order to not to throw the null pointer exception, so here we have to add one more property. Why it will throw? Because every property is an required property by default. So in order not to throw a null pointer exception, so here we can also pass one more parameter inside accurate model annotation, which is nothing but default injection strategy. So default injection strategy is equals to default injection strategy dot optional. So when I'm specifying here default injection strategy dot optional, so that becomes now this entire global annotation makes every field, whatever the variables you are having. So now this makes every variable as an optional variable, not a required variable. Okay. So here also child class as well, we have to pass the same thing. So default injection strategy is equals to default injection strategy dot optional. So now this also becomes an optional field. So multi-title and multi-image also an optional field. So here we can also pass. So now I have created the Sling model. I have deployed the Sling model, and then it will work. So once I have deployed the Sling model, but what happens here is, so whenever I'm trying to inject the data, so here I'm injecting title, here I'm injecting description, here I'm injecting hero image. So I can retrieve the data. Okay. But what happens here is, so our Sling, Apache Sling, whatever we are having, so it will, the Sling framework will try to search in all the nodes which are there. So we are having a lot of components right inside this one. So it will search in the entire components for these properties. Okay. Why? Because we are not mentioning or we are not specifying this particular Sling model. We are writing for this model, for this component only. Here you can see, right? So I'm not specifying anywhere. I'm just reading the properties. Suppose then what happens here is, so it will check for the entire components. Okay. So it will try to check for the Apache Sling framework. Will try to search for the entire components. So if you want to map your this Sling model to a particular component only, so at that time here we can pass one more parameter, which is nothing but resource type is one parameter here having, and then it will accept one value, which is nothing but the path of the component. So Marvel details is my component, right? So just copy the path here, and then you can place inside the resource types. So when you specify resource type is equals to, so now what Apache String will do is, while injecting this particular data, it will check it is matching the resource or not. So if it is not matching the resource, it will not inject the data. So if it is if these properties are matching the resource type, so we'll be having right in the content node Sling colon resource type value. So if this resource type value matches to the Sling colon resource type value, so then only our Sling framework will inject the data. Otherwise, it will not inject the data. So right now, whatever the things we have written, so this is only the backend. Okay. So if you want to read this data inside the front end, we have to go for the HTML, and with the help of the HTML framework only, so we can read the content of the Sling model to the front end. So where the components will be available. So to write the HTML markup, we have to write inside the CRXT. So Marvel details.html file will be executed automatically. So we have to write the Sling model here, right? So we have to write the front end here. So we can also write inside the VS Code as well. It gives us a better coding standards compared to the CRXT. So if you want to open your components, so these would be available in the UI apps folder. Our custom components would be available in the UI apps folder, source, JCR root, Marvel, and then components. So here we are having the component which is Marvel details because we are reading the data for this component, right? So we have to call this component data only. So here also we'll add this resource type property in the child Sling model as well. So comma the resource type is equals to you'll be specifying the resource type. Okay. So before writing the HTML, so first we'll try to deploy and we'll check whether the string has been adapted as string model or not. Okay. So every backend change you are making, so every time whenever you are making any backend changes, you have to build your Java classes. Okay. So without compiling your Java classes, you cannot execute them. So how to build your project? So we have to use the command, right? Mvn clean install minus p auto install single package. So right now I have made the changes only in the core module. Okay, I have write the backend of folders inside the core module only. So I just want to build a core. So at that time, which is the command to build only one particular files, one particular folders. So here we have to use the command mvn clean install minus p auto install bundle. So when I'm using this command mvn clean install minus p auto install bundle, so now it will compile only the core module. So instead of compiling the entire project, which will takes a lot of time, I'm just compiling the core module so that it would be easily. So mvn clean install minus p auto install bundle and then hit enter. Okay, so now the build is successful. So now if you want to check whether your Sling model has been adapted successfully or not, you can just call your class name. So just copy the class name. And then here we have one path called system console bundles. Okay, so localhost colon 4502 and then system console Sling adapter is one thing we are having. So Sling, or else we can go for bundles. And then inside the bundles we have an option of Sling, and then inside the Sling we have an option of Sling adapters. So go inside this Sling adapters and try to search for your model. So Marvel demo model is now has been adapted and registered successfully. Okay, so com dot Sling http servlet request, so this is one adaptable, right? Org apache Sling api Sling http servlet request is one adaptable which we have passed, and then we also passed an resource dot class. So that is the second adaptable we have passed. So now my Sling model has been adapted in both the things. One is Sling HTTP servlet request and second one is resource dot class. That means Sling model has been adapted successfully. Okay, so just copy this path. So this is the fully qualified class name, package name plus package name dot class name we are having. Okay, so now whatever the data that is inside this Sling model, so I want to read the data from the Sling model. Okay, I want to read the data from the Sling model. So how we can read the data from the Sling model inside your component.html file? Suppose if it is an normal content node data, I can read with the help of the properties object. So properties dot title, properties dot description we can read. But I want to read the data from this custom Java class we have created. So how we can read the data? So in order to call any data from the front end or from the Java classes, in order to fetch any data from the Java classes, how we can do that? With the help of
Object.
objects we can write, right? So for this Sling model, we have to create an object. Okay. So in order to read the data from this Java class, for the Sling model, we have to create an object. So how to create an object inside the HTL?
Data slaves.
We can use. use attribute. So data hyphen sly hyphen use. So with the help of data hyphen sly hyphen use, we can create an object for the Java classes, and then for the JavaScript files we can create, and we can also create for the CSS files as well. We can create the objects. So here I don't want to have the attribute, so that's why I'm going for the slide. Okay, so slide data hyphen sly hyphen use is the way to create an object for the Java classes. Dot model is the object I am creating. So model is nothing but the object I am creating. So for which class I want to create? So I want to create an object for this particular class. So I have to create the object, or for this class we have to create an object, right? So then in the double quotes we will be specifying the fully qualified class name. That is nothing but package name dot class name you will be specifying. So now this model is nothing but the object of this particular class. Okay. So now I'll read the data. So I'll write some condition here. So in order to write any if else conditions, if conditions inside HTL, how we can do that?
Data slate.
Date
Test,
test.
right? So diff, I'll create one container. So diff data hyphen sly hyphen test is one variable I'm creating. So diff data hyphen sly hyphen test is equals to, so dollar curly braces, and then I want to read the data, which is nothing but a date picker. So whenever the date is ordered, so then only I want to display the data. If the date is not ordered, I don't want to display the data. So simply you can call this date picker here. So here, how to read the data? So we have to call with the help of this object, right? So that is model we have to call. So we have to call the getter method. We can't write the variable, right? So public get date picker is the value we are having. So this is the method I have to call. So here in order to call the method, so model dot get date picker is the one we are having. So a part of the syntax purpose, we have to remove this get, and then you have to make the t as small. Okay. So model dot date picker. So whenever the date is ordered, so then only I want to display the other fields. So what we are having title, right? So you can directly call this variables, because this get method is returning the same variable only. So you can just call the get title, and then you have to remove the get, and then you have to name the first letter as small. So that will result in this variable. So you can directly call the variable as well. So title is equals to dollar curly braces, and then model dot title. Okay, so similarly we'll call the other data as well. So we'll not write the description. So dollar curly braces model dot description. So you have to call the description. So in order to render the image, you have to go for the image tag. So image src equals to, and then we are having the uh, control. Okay, so now we have read the fields data. So whatever the fields we are having, so I have read the fields data. So whenever the date picker has been ordered, so then only it will inject this data. Okay, so now I want to read the multi-field data. Okay, so how the multi-field data is storing? The multi-field data is storing as a list set. Okay, so list is nothing but a collection of objects. So that means it can be more than one. So whenever we are having more than one, I want to iterate this list in order to get all the shades. Suppose if I'm having two item nodes, so then two item nodes I want to execute, right? So for executing two item nodes, so how we can retrieve the value from this list? Data slide list. So with the help of data slide list, we can iterate the data from the list. Okay, so I want to iterate the data from this particular composite multi-field. So in order to iterate the data from this variable, so from this list of objects, I have to go for data hyphen sly hyphen list. So without list, I can also go for one more HTL attribute, right? So which is similar as list and one more also we are having in
Repeat.
order to iterate the data.
Repeat.
One more custom attribute
Repeat.
we are having.
Repeat.
Yes, we have the repeat. So data hyphen sly hyphen repeat also will do the same function. Sly hyphen list. Okay. So dot item is one object I am creating. So it is a default object, but I'm still creating that object equals to, and in the double quotes where the data is storing. So the data is storing inside this variable. So we have to call this variable that is nothing but composite multi. So model dot composite multi-field. Now the data is stored inside this item. Okay, so I'll iterate this. We are having title. All the data will be storing inside the item, right? So item dot multi-title. Then we are having an image, right? So item dot multi-image. Okay, so now we have created the HTML as well in order to display the data. So this is so whatever we have done here, so this is a front end change. So whenever we are making any changes in the front end, so there is no need to deploy the project. So we can just, with the help of the VS Code extensions, we can import and export the changes. So right now I'm having the changes in the VS Code, which is not available on the CRXT. So if you want to get the changes from the VS Code to the CRXT, we have to export the changes. So just click on export to AEM server. Now it is successfully exported. So now try to refresh and check whether the values are there or not. Okay, so now I have got the code. So this is the one which we have written. Save the changes and go to the sites console and try to add the component and check. Content tree. So Marvel title is the component I've added. So the component is added here, but still it should either specify one message as well, right? So here I'm writing some message. Title is one message I'm writing, and then here also I'm writing title, but it is not displaying any data. Why? Because the date has not been ordered. So whenever now we have written the condition, right? So data hyphen sly hyphen test. Whenever model dot date picker has been ordered, so then only it should display the data. So that is the test condition we have written. So just try to order the date. So title is something we are having, and then our description, some description we'll add. So if you want to directly open the node project node, how we can do that? It is a path field, right? So it is giving an entire repository view. So I want to directly take to this Marvel sites folder.
Root
Root path is
path.
the value we are taking. Multi. Okay, so now it is rendering the data. So whenever we are having multiple things, it is rendering multiple things. Okay, suppose if I try to add one more node here, so inside the multi field, if I try to add one more node, so it will iterate one more node as well. Okay, item. Okay, so it is iterating item 3 as well. So whenever you are having multiple nodes, whenever we are having multiple nodes, so at that time, whenever we are using multi-field, so you have to get the data as an iterate child resource. With the help of iterate child resource annotation, we can get that. Okay, so that is how we can read the data from the child resource. So any questions from this?